Okay, welcome to our first mobility workshop. We're going to have a series of these over the next few months. The way they're going to work is that in each one we're going to focus on a particular body part, particular joint, or particular movement pattern. And we're going to have 2 tests for each one, or 2 or 3 tests, test the range of motion. Something so it gives you a baseline, so when you retest it in a month or 2 months' time, you can see how much improvement there's been. And then after those tests, we're also going to give you a couple of drills to improve those positions or to improve that range of motion. And this is designed to be all stuff that you can do at home, which is why we're filming it from our home. So it's using things that you have around the house if you need any other objects to help improve your mobility. So what we're going to start with for our first one is the shoulder. It's a really common thing we get asked about, particularly how to improve overhead position. Not something that is my strong point by any stretch, so you can be amused when I do these mobility tests in a minute. There's a lot of muscles that attach in at the shoulder. You've got a lot from around the front, so you've got your different pec muscles that attach in, you've got your lats, you've got a lot of your rotator cuffs, so loads of muscles coming in and attached around the shoulder. So trying to pinpoint down to one particular muscle as being tight or whatever it is very hard to do. So we prefer to try and mobilize positions as opposed to mobilizing individual muscles. So let's get started. The 2 tests we're using today, the first one is going to test rotation at the shoulder, and the second one is going to test extension, so pure extension. And all we need to do these tests is a wall. So I'm going to move us over here. All right. So you're going to set yourself up, feet flat on the floor. You're going to get your hips, upper back, head against the wall. As we do these drills, the goal is to keep those flat to the wall so that you're not arching away as you try and perform the test that we do. So with this first one, this is going to look at the rotation of the shoulder. We're going to get, like I said, hips sort of base of the lower back, upper back and head against the wall. We're going to bring the arms out to 90 degrees and get the back of the arms against the wall. From here, we're going to rotate the hands as far back as we can with the goal of getting the back of the hand to touch the wall without that excessive arching away. So you'll find yourself hitting different positions. So some of you may get to here, some of you may be able to get maybe the fingertips back if you really extend the wrist, and some of you will easily be able to get the hands flat against the wall. Try and take a picture or a video of wherever it is you can get so that when we retest this in a month or 2 months' time, you can see the progress. So this is looking at pure shoulder rotation that we have here. The second one, and this is the one that I cannot get my hands to the wall, is a shoulder extension. So what you're going to do, shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, shoulder flexion, is arms are going to be straight again, head, upper back, and top of the hips are against the wall. Arms are going to come straight out, and then you're going to reach up as far back as you can get the arms. That's about my range. Elbows are not allowed to bend, not allowed to arch them away from the wall. So I can get my hands back if I bend the elbows, but if I'm keeping my arms straight, this is my limit here unless I arch up from the wall. So this is my position here, this is my end range. So again, take a picture of wherever it is you can get to, provided you can maintain elbows straight and not arching off the wall. And that's my position there. And that's looking at your thoracic extension and then shoulder flexion. So we're going to look at a couple of drills that are going to help, really both of these positions. I'll explain what it is that we're doing with them, which is going to help more if it kind of biases if it biases one of the positions, I should be saying. So the first drill that we're going to do, you do need a piece of equipment for. And you can use a broom, you can use a mop handle, anything that is like a pole shape. If you have a PVC pipe at home, feel free to use that as well. So I'm just going to set us up here so you can see. All right. So this first drill is addressing both of those issues, so the rotation of the shoulder, but it's biasing more of the sort of thoracic extension and that overhead position. A lot of the time when we try and reach overhead and we struggle to get the arm straight up overhead, it's because we're lacking mobility in our thoracic spine. So our thoracic spine needs to be able to extend so that our shoulder blade can move around it correctly. That's the thoracic spine extending, not the lumbar extending, which you see people do, is extend through the lower back so they can get the arm overhead. We want the lower back to stay neutral and the thoracic to extend, which I really struggle with. So this drill is primarily for that, but it is also going to address some rotation by the way we hold our broomstick or whatever it is you're using. You're going to go with an underhand grip, and you're going to get it just slightly wider than shoulder width apart. When we place the elbows on the chair, elbows are going to be in, hands are going to be out. So that hands want to be outside the shoulders, elbows sort of in or in line with the shoulders. So what I'm going to do here is place my elbows, it's going to be on a chair or a sofa. I'm going to reach back and then pull the broom handle down my back, like so. What I'm thinking of trying to do here is get my chest towards the floor, but not overextending through the lower back. That's the key for this, is we want to make sure we don't get that lower back arch. That's not the goal. Lower back wants to stay neutral, and we're extending through our thoracic spine. So we're trying to extend through this area. So if you are tight and you're doing this correctly, you're probably going to feel stretches around triceps, down through your lats, maybe even at the chest. So your first one could just be static, holding that position, or kind of pulsing head and chest down towards the floor and easing off. So that would be the basic one, is just holding that position and trying to increase the range of motion. For a slightly more advanced version, what you're going to try and do is include some scapular movement in there. So the scapula is the shoulder blade that sits on the back here. And there's two movements that I'm going to have you try and do in that position. One is protraction and retraction of the shoulder blades. So that's your shoulder blades moving kind of forwards and backwards, like squeezing them together and then bringing them around the front. Squeezing them together, bringing them around the front. So that's one. And the second one is trying to get them to elevate and depress. So think of going up and down with the shoulder blade. So that would be number 2. And then you have the number 3. And you're going to try and do that in those positions. So you get into position, you're going to extend, and I'm going to start with the protraction and retraction. So I'm going to try and bring my shoulder blades together. I'm going to try and bring them apart. Shoulder blades together, shoulder blades apart. And the second one is going to be the elevation and depression. So I'm going to try and pull my shoulders down my back, and then I'm going to try and push away, bring my shoulders to my ears. Pull the shoulder down the back, and push away. So that is the other movement that we want to try and do. So with whichever variation you do, whether you're just doing the static holds or whether you're including the scapular movements, you want to get anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes in that position as a minimum. If you're doing the movement, what I recommend is just switching between the two every 5 or so reps. So do 5 shoulder blades together, shoulder blades apart, and then do 5 where you're kind of elevating, depressing the shoulder blade as well. But a minimum of 2 to 3 minutes each time you do this. And ideally, this is going to be a daily practice. You definitely want to be doing it every day. And if you have the time, multiple times a day. So I think talking 1 or 2 times a day would be ideal. The next one we are going to look at is something for our chest. So a really common place that people get restricted, especially the boys from the years of bench press, is in your chest. And your pec muscle attaches in at the shoulder. You've got your pec major, and then the one that always gets everyone is the pec minor, which is underneath the big muscle. You have a smaller one, which attaches on the ribs and then comes in and attaches at the shoulder. And if you think of the muscle like this, when it contracts or shortens, it's pulling us this way into this position. So if this is tight, I'm going to have a really hard time getting my arm overhead. So if we think that if this is my chest muscle here, my pec or my pec minor, and it is tight or short and it's pulling here, that's going to really restrict me getting my arm overhead. Where if it relaxes and it's nice and long, then I'm going to be able to get my head back. So it pulls us into this position. It's one of the movements that it does. So naturally the opposite movement is going to be harder. So you have 3 variations of this chest stretch. depending on which kind of area of the pec that you want to get to. You can get more towards the lower, you can get middle, and then you can get upper. Really, you want to choose the one or two where you feel most of a stretch. The way you're going to do it is get your hand flat against the wall and the elbow against the wall. And now the height of this dictates which area of the chest that you're going to stretch. So the first one is elbow in line with the shoulder. The second one is elbow in line with the nose. And then the third one is elbow in line with the head. So hand, forearm flat against the wall. I'm going to go about nose height, and then you're turning away from that position. And you'll feel a stretch to your chest. And again, you can play with the height and find the one where you feel like you get the most stretch. From here, you can either just do static, or you can tie some movement in there. So you're going to drive this with the hips. So I can drive what would be side to side, try and drive some movement, like so. I can also drive forwards and backwards from the wall. Again, trying to keep the elbow against the wall. And then I can also try some rotation. So I'm trying to rotate towards the arm and away from the arm. So we got sort of side to side motion, forward, backward motion, and then a rotation. And again, if you're doing those and you're going for 2 or 3 minutes, you can rotate the movements every sort of 10 or so reps, and you want to rotate that round. As with the drill before, we want to make sure that we're trying to hit that daily. And if you can get multiple times a day, especially if you're one that sits at a desk. The next thing requires a mobility tool. So if you have a lacrosse ball, baseball, tennis ball, we have a nice supernova here, which is ACE. You can use also, I see people do this on things like deodorant cans, a nice cylindrical object that you can do rolling on. It's quite thick, so it can actually get into the tissues. It works quite well. And there's 2 areas that you are going to hit. We have chest, and then we have back of the shoulder, or the rotator cuff is what we're going to hit. So if I bring us down to the floor. So first one is back of the shoulder, where we can get really bound up, is right in the back here. You have a lot of attachments where your lat comes in. You have infraspinatus and supraspinatus starts coming in through here as well, which is your rotator cuff muscles. And if they get really bound up, it can make rotational movements of the shoulder really, really difficult. So you're going to take your object, think armpit height, but just around the back is where we're going to go. So I'm going to get let's try and get a good angle here. I'm going to go here, armpit height into the back of the shoulder. There's various things we can do here. We can do our rotational movements. So I am at 90 degrees here, roughly. And we can do our rotational movements in here. So we're working on that rotation of the shoulder. And you can play around with that ball in different positions. If you find somewhere that's super sore, that's where you need to spend most of the time. So you can practice the rotation. You can also mobilize in that overhead position, so you can get the arm up overhead. I'm still gonna go that same sort of area and try and work in and around that. And again, if I find a sore spot, you can do some breathing in here. So do some nasal breathing, perfect time to practice. Bit thing in through the nose, out through the nose, and try and relax onto the ball. You can get some micro movements in there, so moving forwards, backwards, up and down. Find some sore spots. And again, you can still work rotation here, even if the arm's overhead. So try all the different arm positions. You can stay static, you can keep moving, but find where you feel like there's a restriction or it's really sore, and that's where you want to spend the time, because that's where you're restricted. And again, on here, thinking 2 to 3 minutes aside, try and get that in there. Your next spot is going to be in at the chest. And again, pec minor is the real key in this. It's not usually the pec major for most people, it's the pec minor, which can be difficult to get at because it's underneath that pec major. It's a lot smaller. So you're going to take your object, and we're going to go along the front now. And I'm going to try and think of almost trying to tuck in and underneath here. So I'm on the chest. And again, you might have to play around with the arm position just to find the best place to try and get at that. And again, we can get some movement in here. So as I am on my object, I can get some movement, so I can bring the arm down. I can bring the arm up. So you can get some movement in there. Again, if you find a sore spot, you can relax on it, do some breathing. You can do some micro movements, but find the sore spots and spend some time on there. So we've got our shoulder extension with that broomstick and getting the scapular movement. So that's a really, really effective one because you're getting in that overhead position and then you're moving around your thoracic spine. So it's helping drive some extension, which a lot of people miss. And that is from sort of modern day living, where you spend most of your day like this at a desk and you end up in this curved position. And getting your arm overhead from there is really hard, so we need to try and regain that extension, open up the chest. That gives us access to that overhead position. After you've done some mobility, you always want to try and do some dynamic movement in there, especially if you've just done passive stretching. Passive stretching has its place, but it's not going to be the magic cure. You need to get some movement in there. So once you've done your mobility, whether you're working on some rotation, which can simply be, you can go back up against the wall, back flat against the wall, and accumulate 30, 40, 50 reps, just practice that, get that rotation, get it moving. A good one I like for the shoulder extension is you can either do some wall facing squats, so we do this a lot in class where you're squatting down, keeping your hands away from the wall. But another good one is getting the arms on the wall and then just pulling them away from the wall. So you're getting close in, arms up, arms back. So you're trying to pull back, and again, watching that we're not overextending. You can also flip this around and do those sort of classic wall angels, trying to keep back flat against the wall, sliding the arms up and down the wall. So that should get you going with the shoulder work. Remember, try and do it daily, at least once a day. If you can get it multiple times a day, even better. Make sure you're testing and retesting. You want to see that it's making a difference. And you should notice an immediate difference in how it feels. So if you do the test and then you do your mobility drills and go back to the test, it should feel better. It's not going to be perfect, but it should feel easier, should feel improved. If it's not, then they're not the drills for you, but I would be surprised if those drills didn't work for you. When we come back for the next mobility workshop, make sure you have a full retest. So it'll be in like a month or so's time. Make sure you have a full retest in there. Make sure you take pictures so you can compare the start to the end. If you have any questions on these drills at all, just let me know. You can post it in Slack. Chances are other people have the questions as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks.